Good afternoon, folks. Today's November 19th, 2025. This is the City of Lowell Affordable Housing Trust Fund Board meeting. My name is George Coloris, and I'll be your administrator. Welcome. I'm going to start with the roll call. If you hear your name and you're here, just say here. Ta Chai.
Here.
Valerie O'Para.
Here.
Kathy Mercado.
Here.
Jessica Finaccio.
Here.
Tom Golden.
Here.
Connor Baldwin. He's here.
George, I'm on as well.
Eric Nelson.
Here.
Thank you.
Motion to start the meeting.
I get a motion by Ty Chad to start the meeting. Can I get a second? Second by Connor Baldwin. All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting called to order. Like to get a motion?
Motion.
Get a motion from Ty Chad to approve the minutes from the October 15th, 2025 meeting. Can I get a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. Okay, we're going to move to continued business. It's an update of the CPA application that we submitted. So we were eligible, everybody knows, there's a copy of the application right here if anybody needs to see it, of the funding eligibility, and we're going to present on December 5th the actual application in a PowerPoint presentation. So that's our next step with that. In addition to...
George, do you need any of us to be there on the 5th?
I would love to have support there. If people have time on the 5th to do that, that would be great. I would love that. The more the merrier and the more powerful we'll look.
What time's the meeting?
I'll get all the specifics and I can email it out to everybody if that's okay. Yeah, I would love support
That'd be
there
great.
for that. Yeah, we'll create a PowerPoint presentation. We'll present it to that board. So we're going for $310,000 to add to the fund. So yes, I'll send that out and I'd love to have the support, Eric. Thank you. Okay, so we also are going to move to some of the new business. We had sat and met with some of the upper level management to discuss some projects from the City of Lowell that they fully support the Affordable Housing Trust Fund to engage in. We're still working on those discussions. We had met with our CFO, our city manager, and our assistant city managers, and with Jessica, and we started to begin, we do have some ideas, but we have a little bit more work to do, and we're going to meet again on that and be able to present some projects back. The same applies to the law department. We had some specific questions about the law department. We did meet with them as well. We're going through those issues. It's going to take another meeting for us to come back with some answers for that. Does anybody have any questions, discussions on the CPA application or update from the law department? Is there any additional new business that we need to talk about, or anybody wants to discuss? Connor, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, and thank you, everybody, for coming today. I wanted to bring up for the board's consideration, a project that has come to the city manager's office by way of Mr. Bob Cox, who is the operator of the Bridge Club in Lowell. I think this is something we'd like to put on the agenda for a more full discussion and have Mr. Cox here to discuss the project. But he is in discussions for what I believe to be a residential treatment program with sort of a affordable component to it. At the former, I believe it's Barshond Hall. It's on Pawtucket Street near University Crossing. If anybody's familiar with the location or the parcel, it is something that he's presented to the health department as well as the city manager's office, and certainly I can speak for the manager. We support this very much so. I think the ask would be not for the entire acquisition price, but for about $500,000. And I believe, obviously, don't take my word for it. We will show you more information, so my colleagues can vet this for themselves. But he is looking for a letter to indicate that this may be something the board would be willing to support. And the manager asked me to come today to talk with you all about whether that's something the board would be willing to support. It has the manager's support. It would be in certain, taking off that hat, putting on my CFO hat. Time is of the essence. We all know that. We're trying to find viable projects that we can we can fund as soon as possible. With the approximately $3 million from the ARPA fund. And this seems to be one that seems consistent with all of these. So it's very exciting. I know I'm dumping this information on my colleagues. So I think, Mr. Clerk, if next time we could add this as an item for more full discussion, but I'd be interested in opening it up for some discussion here, whether the board would be willing to support us in sending a letter to Mr. Cox that this is something we'd be willing to entertain.
Your timing's excellent, because that's what we've been talking about. We were looking for a project, so this is perfect timing. I'm in support of it, willing to hear more.
Would like to hear more.
I'd like to hear more. Okay. I had a question, though. So you said a residential treatment program. How many people, how many units do you looking for?
That's an excellent question, and one that I don't have all the details for. Mr. Cox and I spoke on the phone earlier today. I was hopeful that I'd get his packet. He, I think, also applied to the Community Preservation Act. The Community Preservation Committee from funding from the Community Preservation Act. And so I was just, before I came in, trying to dig up the application there, hopeful it has more details. But Ms. Opara, we absolutely will bring more details forward. I don't know the number of units or the population it will serve, so I apologize, I don't have that information with me today. But we will bring that forward for a more full discussion.
Thank you.
Maybe we can make a motion to entertain inviting Bob Kotz to the next meeting to explain the project he has to present to us. Is that fair?
I would be willing to make that in the form of a motion.
Please do.
So just before we do, just a couple of questions. So it sounds like it suits the types of projects that we've been discussing to date. I agree with George and my colleagues that we have been pressing the city to bring projects before us because we understand time is of the essence. I think we would just need to kind of understand, the details of the project, the details of the request, and to get Mr. Cox's package in advance of our next meeting so we could review it and then ask some informed questions at the meeting, as opposed to, reviewing it live. That would be very helpful.
Okay.
It's an excellent idea, Mr. Chairman. And something we will absolutely do. So
Thank you.
I can transmit that information to George, and he can distribute to the members of the board. We can have a full discussion, whether the manager is able to join us himself next time, or I will be here in his place. But I think that's an excellent idea, and we will get that information as soon as possible to the members so that there's plenty of time to read through the details.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Thanks, Eric. Anyone else on that?
Motion.
Second from Kathy Mercado. All those in favor to have Bob Cox attend our next meeting and discuss the project that they have in mind for the Affordable Housing Trust? Can I get a second? Second by Tai Cha. All those in favor?
Aye.
Say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Vote passes. Any other discussion on that area, folks? Anyone? Any other new business? Todd, did you have something you want to talk about?
Just want to share that I've had sent an email to Mr. Clerk, George. I brought up, just share my concern with regard to the timeline of expenditure of ARPA funding. And we heard about this several times already, that the funding had to be spent by December 31st, 2026. Since ARPA funding, of course, target low-income geographic area or population, most cases that my experience and my team running into is that there's 4 important components, and maybe not all project would have to go through that, but the timeline to complete the whole process and spending, we may have time, but I think it's getting shorter and shorter. So I put in the email, I'm not sure if you can share that with everyone, but my experience is the first thing would be the environmental assessment and environmental review would take between 60 to 90 days. It depends on the nature of the job itself. So you end up between 2 to 3 months already for environmental review. And then A&E, architecture and engineering, design, the scope of the work, advertisement, including everything, it would take between 90 to 120 days. Again, it depends on the scope of the work, the nature of the work, and everything else. And number three would be contractor soliciting. Then to secure the contractor and also the bond. That, I mean, sometimes take, it depends, but right after the pandemic, it took a little bit longer. And I would say, based on my best estimate, is between maybe 30 to 60, sometimes lead to 90 days. And then also the supply. And again, the nature of the work, the weather condition also come into the picture. So, I mean, it would take up between 6 to 9 months. So I guess we need to really make the decision quick. Yes, there might be project out there that's shovel ready, but if there's project that's shovel ready, it's already funding's already committed for that project. So I think we need to move quick, because based on what our discussion, if it would be nice if we can have spent by the end of September, so that the city at least have about 3 months to prepare, right? So I just want to put it on the table so that for us to understand that it takes time to put the project together.
I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Yes, Connor?
Mr. Clerk, thank you. Those are all very good points, and I'd just like to add maybe a little more context that Ms. Finicaro and I and my deputy, Mr. Ball, have had some discussions about some of those details, and I want to share a little bit about my thoughts with the board to help help inform the decision-making process here, because it is true that these development projects take time, and time is not necessarily on our side as it relates to trying to expend these funds that are with the trust. I think there is a technical question, and I don't want to put Ms. Finicaro on the spot, but I may lean on some of your expertise to refresh my memory about the trigger for the expenditure deadline, and whether this is something I want to sort of put my thoughts forward for the members of the board, but we'll vet them forward with our the attorneys in the law department as well. That an expenditure from the trust to a developer. I guess the question that I will pose is, does that expenditure in and of itself meet the expenditure deadline, or is it the certificate of occupancy on those units that triggers the expenditure deadline? And so that's a question that I don't necessarily know the answer to, but in my mind, up until this point, it was the former, that when the city in all cases, or the board in this case, the city for all other ARPA purposes, when we cut the check, in most cases that would satisfy that 2026 deadline. Now, there may be something more nuanced about this particular program within ARPA, but it does bear consideration where one of the things that we talked about was, is there a project, and you made an excellent point about, those projects that are about to open already have their financing, so they're not going to be looking for financing. However, I would submit that we may be able to affect the affordability of some of the units where they already have financing in place. So I just want the members to know that that is still an option if it can make units more affordable or turn market rate units into affordable units. So there could be projects out there that do already have their financing, but a loan or some type of financing vehicle to those projects would either make more affordable units or turn workforce housing units into affordable units, more deeply affordable. I don't know all the terms, but I think you certainly know what I'm talking about. So I guess I would put that sort of world of questions. I want to pass over to Ms. Finicaro to maybe add some context and help the board to understand this, the time constraints a little bit more.
Of course. So all really great questions, all of you. And we did have a deeper discussion on some of the proposed types of projects at the last meeting. And so to answer your question about the time in which the funds are expended. So I was able to get clarity within the language that for items such as buy downs and acquisitions, and conversions of existing units to affordable units, that the time when the legal transaction actually takes place is the time in which it's considered expended for ARPA. For new construction, that is less clear, so that is one of the many questions that we asked to the law department in one of our meetings. To me, when you're looking at like take ARPA out of it for a second. So if the city was, say, funding an affordable housing program outside of, I know that this is a new trust, but say this was outside, this was maybe with CPA funds, you would have less of a rush because the CPA funds can roll over and it's sort of less of an issue, right? So in that case, you would have more time to say, okay, here's a benchmark that I want to see the contractor make. I want to see this happen by the time, I want occupancy permit in place before we give the funds, or whatever timeline that you guys have established in a contract. The issue becomes whether or not we can do something earlier than that, and also the question of whether or not you would want to, because say, for example, funding was given to something that then, is like just in the beginning stages of being funded and may take, much longer to take place, that, might be difficult for the city in terms of having given the money for ARPA, but then, maybe they haven't done all of their funding. I know that there's been some other potential projects that didn't have all of their funding ready yet. So that is part of the question. So that's more of a combination of ARPA legal question and a preference question as far as the city is concerned, because you would have less of an ability to pull things back because you would have already have given the check and the ARPA program would be over. So for example, if there was a program where they were going to do a conversion for regular housing to affordable housing for a certain number of units to be de-restricted for 20 years, something like that is something that we can move forward with really quickly on. Something like a principal-only buy-down, doing with the home program, that's something that we could pivot really quickly on as well. Direct land acquisition, similarly, once we give the money, exchange the money and sort it out, that is also the time period at which the funds are considered expended. So for example, say you were acquiring land from and then turning around, doing an RFP and putting it out to developers to develop and have them give proposals for the number of affordable housing units that you would have. In that case, because you've already paid the funds at that point, you would be good if it was funding that you needed to pay for the acquisition. If it was an acquisition that didn't cost anything because, say, it was being gifted from the city of Lowell to us, then the acquisition would be at the time of having a RFP that we want to move forward with, and the closing that happens that has the payments and everything settled. So it really, like in summary, it comes down to the legal transaction being the determining date as to when the money was expended. But in the case of construction, being a legal question plus a preference question.
Thank you.
That is
very helpful.
So that's very helpful. I think it's good guidance. Just a couple, and Connor, thank you for getting those clarifications from the law department. I think those are questions we've asked previously, and we welcome kind of the answers and the guidance from others at the city. it would be, just speaking for myself, it would be helpful if we could kind of get in writing just the summary of kind of what was just shared with us, and it's probably in the minutes, but also just kind of an outline of the different types of transactions, and maybe even so that we can be as expedient as possible going forward. Just maybe take a quick glance at the questions that have been presented to the law department, because what I would hate is for you to get us the answers at our meeting next month. We have a bunch of questions, and then we have to wait another month to get answers to those questions. So, if there are kind of questions that they're reviewing, for me, I would want to know, like, what difference, how the capitalization affects it, right? Whether it's a loan or whether it's equity or whether it's a grant, does that affect how the timing is measured? So, not to make work for people, but I think it would be expedient if we could take a peek at, kind of what's been asked of the law department to date.
Mr. Chairman? I, I, I think that's an excellent point, and I would make a motion, maybe if so inclined, make a motion to request the law department, just so we sort of have something official to make a request. I make a motion to request the law department to provide the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Board of Trustees with a legal opinion on a summary of the legal components of number one, acquisition and sort of all incidental components, and then number two, the layer of ARPA. So maybe I'll rephrase that a little bit. Request the law department provide the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Board with a legal opinion as to acquisition or funding of affordable housing projects, and also how ARPA impacts that analysis, that legal analysis.
Second,
Yeah. Do we need to restate that, Connor, or does that suffice for the motion? Or since you're a member, right? So.
Yeah, I think that's Mr. Clerk. If you
Yes.
got that, we'll if we take a vote here on the motion, we'll forward that up to the law department and hopefully be able to get some clarity, hopefully before our next meeting.
Motion made
Yeah,
by Connor Baldwin to request from the legal department their opinion summary for the Affordable Housing Trust. Can I get a second? Second by Ta-Cha. All those in favor? All those opposed? Vote passes.
Thank you.
Jessica?
I just have one question to the board members. For this advisory, the ARPA housing, affordable housing requirements were broader than some of the recommendations that we gave to you, but they were intended, for people who started in maybe 2022 and were doing some of, larger construction projects and might have had more time for different types of projects. And I just wanted to clarify that you're looking for not just, what's possible, but sort of what's possible and recommended. And I just wanted to clarify if does that sound accurate, that you're looking for more so both that direction, as opposed to like all the, options that are possible? Okay.
I feel like we should look at all options that are possible, especially with the limited time. So I want to be on the record stating that there shouldn't be something omitted because of what's the possibility. Like, I want to say anything is possible. We have to disperse this money, and if we don't, we end up, the latter is losing the funds, right? So everything should be possible.
Mm-hmm. And
The ARPA guidelines.
And thank you. And I think we might be saying the same thing, but differently, because I saw yeses and nos, but I think we were actually on the same page, so I just want to clarify. So what we did is the approach in the ARPA language had a broad range of things that you could do. And then between myself, George, Connor, and a lot of the rest of the executive team worked to sort of bring that down to the ones that are able to be done most quickly, and sort of reduce that to the 4 that you guys voted at the last meeting. And as opposed to sort of like all of the different list. And I'm just thinking about, because it is a really, ARPA is I think tough when giving advisement, because they don't necessarily give all of the information that you would necessarily like. So I think it sounds like we're on the same page, right? That we're relative to those 4 that you guys approved at the last meeting.
My apologies, I was not here for the last meeting, so maybe that's where I'm misunderstanding a little bit, but, you know, I definitely respect your opinion and the work that you all have done. And we do have an expert, so I know there's still a lot of things that we need to unpack. However, I just want to state that I was not here for the last meeting, unfortunately.
Gotcha. I didn't realize. So the if this is helpful, the 4 items that I said earlier about the acquisitions and the conversions, sort of getting into those types. So it's still relatively broad in terms of how it could be applied, but it's narrowing down from sort of, you know, maybe 40 different ways a week ago to 4 different ways. But, you know, if something were to come up that was outside of those 4 that we could be able to pivot to quickly, then, you know, we could still bring that forward.
Thank you so much for the clarification.
Of course.
Pretty fine from my opinion. I mean, I'm not, tied to those 4 that we've talked about previously. If there's more things that I'm all for flexibility and, reasonableness and, trying to meet the timelines that we have in front of us. So.
Agreed. Any other discussion on that matter,
I just,
folks?
um,
Yes, Val, go right ahead.
I know you're working on projects for us, so I'm just wondering if any other projects based on these 4 items that we suggested, any other projects available?
So during, we had a very, very long, intense meeting with Connor, with George, the assistant CFO, and also the assistant city manager, and went over, and also somebody from the law department. And we went over extensively, here are all of our questions. Here are some potential proposed projects that aren't, sort of ready to be, publicly stated, but are, a question of, hey, we know this is going on. Would this be a potential? And what would that look like? Is this ARPA eligible? And making sure that we've clarified all of those things first. So once we hear back on those items, then we'll be able to have a better, I think, discussion. In the last meeting, the vote that was taken by the board was to make sure that the city has taken a project sort of to its conclusion in the process of checking to make sure that it's ARPA eligible before we bring it before you for a vote, and making sure that all of the checks that the city needs to do on their end, both with the law department and maybe with other areas, like DPD and others, are complete before bringing it to you, so that we have a finished project. So there might be times where we say, hey, before we get into this, we want to let you know just generally about this. What do you think before we go down the road? But otherwise, we'll stick to that request that you guys had with making sure that we have a finished product. So just because you don't hear necessarily an exact project today doesn't mean that we're not, doing the due diligence in the meantime. It'll just mean that when it is brought to you, it's sort of like ready to go. We're ready to send it for next steps, contracts, things like that. So that means there'll probably be, since we just started, I just met George. Since we just started, then that'll mean that we'll have this sort of lag time in between, I would imagine, while we figure this out and do all of these checks, and then bring you the finished products.
We hope to continue to vet some projects and bring some to the next meeting for you.
Okay.
That's all right, with a little bit more time.
There's been a significant amount of work going on in the background, and I know, we get together once a month here for the board, but in the interim, we've been working, vetting through some of these projects, and we are still optimistic there will be good, viable projects brought before the board in the timeline. So we're very optimistic about that and excited to bring those forward.
Okay, thank you.
That's excellent. Thank you, Connor. Thank you, Val. Any other discussion on those matters? Folks, any other members? Anyone? Okay, our next meeting is scheduled for December 17th, 2025, which is the third Wednesday in December. That'll be our final meeting for 2025. And we have an agenda. Obviously, we're going to try to bring some of these things from Mr. Cox. We'll have him there too, and we'll be working on that. Any other discussions, any other questions before we move to adjourn? Anyone? Eric, you okay?
I'm great, George. Thank you for asking.
Awesome. Can I get a motion?
A motion to adjourn?
Second.
Motion made by Connor Baldwin to adjourn the meeting, seconded by Ty Cha. All those in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes, meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Have a great night.
Thanks, everyone.